Cats fans, how bloody good is that winning feeling? Welcome, my name is Paul James to the latest reaction video here at the Hoops Crew. That is Geelong's round 8 victory against the Magpies. And I'm pretty bloody excited about it, I might add. This is coming in fresh from a 3-point victory against the Magpies. Let's bring up the scores here and start to get into proceedings and a bit of an analysis here. Geelong 13-12-90, beat the Pies. It took till after the siren to have an outcome determined. 12-15-87, skin of our teeth sort of stuff. Let's, of course, not lose sight of the fact that the Pies absolutely had the opportunity to win the game after the siren. Jack Crisp, this was very much footy god style stuff here. Jack Crisp, the bloke who broke the AFL record for the most number of consecutive games played, had a shot after the siren from about 50 out, almost directly in front, hooked it a little bit to the right, giving the Cats the win. It very easily could have gone straight through. He's a brilliant kick, and we could have been talking about a loss here, but we are basking in that winning feeling. So let's break things down a little bit here. We'll talk about the worm, we'll talk about the momentum of the game, and we'll get into things from there. So our match timeline gives us a little bit of a sense for what this game was all about. Geelong got out the blocks really, really well. And what I was super impressed to see is Shannon Neale in particular had a massive influence on the game in the first quarter in particular. Helped set the tone. The Cats piled on a few goals pretty quickly, got some really early ascendancy, showed the Pies that we were absolutely up for this fight. Before things started to shift a little bit, the Pies then kicked what? I think it was 4 of the next 5 of the next 6, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They kicked 5 of the next 6 goals, which absolutely terrified everyone a little bit there. The Pies, you could see the momentum was coming. They piled those first 3 to kind of regain the lead very quickly and held on to that lead for quite a while. I mean, we can see it even ballooned out to 20 points during the third quarter there. The second and the majority, I would say, probably and the first half of the third quarter were completely owned by the Pies. Geelong had the first 20 minutes of the game. The Pies probably had the next 70 overall, if we're being honest. And that's where they really, I guess, took some ascendancy over the game. What they didn't do was capitalize when they needed to, giving Geelong a sniff and always remaining close. 7 points at halftime, 7 points at three-quarter time. And finally, we broke their back. We flicked a switch. The intensity went up, and the Cats motored home. And again, the Magpies being the team that they are, did not go away without a fight. As we've, of course, already discussed, Jack Crisp having a shot on goal after the siren there, but they piled on those goals late. Myercheck with 2 of them. Maybe some lapses defensively in those last few minutes that allowed Myercheck to get at least one of those 2. The one in the goal square, I think, is a particular concern of mine. But a few little lapses there defensively that allowed the Pies to kick those goals. But overall, lots of praise to be thrown upon the Cats for this particular win. Now, we're going to get into the game itself. We're going to talk about some team stats. We're going to talk about some individuals who I really want to spotlight. I'm feeling very vindicated after a few people have been expressing some concerns about my takes on the likes of Ollie Henry and Shannon Neale, Jai Clark of late. Feeling pretty vindicated right now. But we're going to talk about those players and a whole lot more after a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of all we do at the Hoops Crew. Thank you very, very much. Now, let's get into proceedings a little bit here. Let's start to dive into some team stats and pick it apart and also try and read into what that told us about the game. These numbers are largely, I mean, they're largely in Collingwood's favour, but they are as close as they are in some cases because of an absolute demolition the Geelong enacted in the final term there. They really piled on the pressure. And of course, the Magpies did what they do and they got really close with a few minutes to go. But the numbers heavily swung back in Geelong's favour or towards Geelong's favour again in that last quarter due to the dominance of the first 20, 25 minutes of that period. Overall, though, the Pies still got it done. We say this week in, week out. Geelong is not a high possession team. We tend not to have the high disposal count. We're there or thereabouts. That's fine. Kicks, handballs. I think the really important thing here is this handball figure and the lack of kicks. And this is not necessarily reflective of what I was talking about a moment ago. These numbers, the kicks being down on our average, the handballs being above our average, are largely what they are because of a very specific, clear and obvious shift in the game plan that started to take place through that third quarter and certainly proceeded well into the fourth. Geelong, for the longest time, we talk about that launch zone, that part of the ground that's about 70, 80 meters out from goal, and how you can then deliver that to 10, 20 meters out and give your forwards a really solid opportunity, whether they're tall forwards clunking it or the smalls roving it to snap a goal. We talk about how important that launch zone is. Geelong, for the first 2.5 quarters, they did very well in the first 15, 20 minutes or so. But then from that point onwards, the majority of the first 2.5 quarters of the game, Geelong weren't getting the ball to that launch zone very well. We were trying to launch the ball into that zone rather than methodically bring the ball over there. And it was allowing the Collingwood defenders, along with the midfield unit who were playing a very disciplined role in defense as well, to just pick that off, intercept, and then rebound inside 50. And there's some data I saw. There was some of the commentary teams were talking about it in just terms of how potent Collingwood were before Geelong changed the game plan. That just disappeared. That component of the game completely vanished. Maybe it resurfaced in those last few minutes when desperation stakes were on. But even from memory, I don't really recall anything. In the bulk of that second half of Collingwood kind of launching those forward thrusts from D50. Geelong would they'd maybe get the ball outside of their defensive 50, and then they'd go the long kick and try and take it to the half forward flank, take it to our 50, instead of shorter kicks, 25-meter passes, going sideways, using the angles, making the Collingwood defensive unit move. They started to enact that in that second half, and all of a sudden they started finding gaps. All of a sudden, they're taking the ball to 70 meters out and then delivering it inside. And they looked far more potent for it, and it turned out to be pretty successful. So a lot of these numbers, obviously, as I said, are kind of skewed and influenced a little bit by what we saw in the first 2.5 quarters. Disposal efficiency is good. We're lacking a little bit when it comes to our efficiency inside 50, but Collingwood's is quite high, and I think that's also a reflection of what I was just talking about before. Collingwood had it so easy in that first half. Our defenders did a fantastic job of fighting, but they had it very easily delivering inside 50 in the first half. Collingwood, that number, I presume, would have dropped through that second half because they weren't getting their hands on the ball as much, but they weren't being able to deliver it inside 50 as regularly. Geelong's skewed for the opposite reasons. We did a horrible job of it early on, and then we had a lesser portion of the game where we started to take control there. The free kick count, okay, it is what it is. There's obviously some contentious ones that I think if most people go and rewatch the footage, they'll notice, we have to take Mark Blitzarves at his word that he touched it because then the umpire said it was inconclusive. But holding the ball, like holding the mans, holding the balls, those sorts of things. If you rewatch some of the footage, it was pretty clear cut for the most part. But of course, the toothless Collingwood fans out there were screaming, shouting, hooting, and hollering. Not all of them are toothless, but there's a few. The hitouts, obviously things kind of took a bit of hiding for us when Reece Stanley went off with a hamstring injury. Clearance numbers, fantastic to see that we kind of squared that up. It was looking pretty dire at one point. I think it was 10-1 at one stage early on in the game. But that really started to swing around. I think that was centre clearances specifically. Geelong really started to kind of take control in that area in the second half of the match. Stoppage clearance is great. Look, I think this is all very representative of what the game actually was in terms of the bigger picture. And these numbers would have started to trend Geelong's way through that second half. Contested possessions, uncontested. Again, we changed the way our game played, so I don't think the stats are necessarily going to tell us a huge amount here. And of course, we can see the last 10 minutes, Collingwood really starting to get their hands on it again. But the quarter, Geelong, the match, Collingwood, again, all mirroring what we actually saw net outcome-wise. Marks, that dropped off as we started to play a handballing game. Marks inside 50. Again, because of the way we let Collingwood deliver it inside 50 early on, we created this. We gave them good opportunities that they didn't always take, but we gave them those opportunities. And then obviously scores, time in front. no need to worry about that there. We do have fewer tackles, considering we were chasing tail. That's maybe a little bit disappointing, but I'm not overly concerned because there was a lot of pressure acts that won't get recorded as a tackle, but were really, really important. We're going to talk about the likes of O'Shea Mullen. We're going to talk about Jai Clark and some of those guys shortly. Obviously, the Tom Atkinses of the world as well, who are really important in this respect. And there's where it's highlighted. Our tackle count, lower. 1%ers, higher. We really had a strong presence around the ball, even if we weren't actually able to lay the tackle. Let's start to get into some player stats here. And as I said, we're going to talk about, there's a few players that I really want to highlight here. Of course, there's Tom Atkins, and this is currently sorted alphabetical, but we'll jump into disposal mode there. Tom Atkins with his defensive pressure again was fantastic, but he didn't do it alone, which I think is really, really important here. Now, I don't know what the numbers are actually going to tell us. When I look for the likes of Jai Clark, where are you? 2 tackles. Like, that doesn't necessarily, I think, paint the picture of Jai Clark's day. Please, I implore people to go back and watch the footage. And I've rewatched this game already since. The number of spoils, the number of bodyline acts that he executed during the day that didn't result in a stat for him, but resulted in taking a Collingwood player off the ball or allowing a teammate to get hands on it was huge. I think this was close to Jai Clark's best game. And some will question, how could you say that when he had 12 disposals and he probably played a larger percentage of game time than he's played up to this point? Where are we, Jai Clark? No, still from 62%. So he's still getting limited game time here. I am thrilled with the output from Jai Clark in this particular match. He bodylined the ball, and I've just touched on it. He bodylined the ball and committed himself to that ball so many times, created some 50-50 contests where perhaps he shouldn't have been able to or wouldn't have maybe in previous games. I think this was an important moment for him at the AFL level. And hopefully he bottles that and continues to take it into future weeks. And as he gets more game time, we start to see more disposals and we start to see more of the Jai Clark that many of us hoped he would be when we first drafted him. He wasn't alone in that respect, though. Jack Bowes' defensive pressure was fantastic. Again, not a huge number of tackles, but the way, much like Danger was in the second half, he was bursting through contests at full speed, shrugging people off. It didn't always work, but he was so important in that respect. Sean Manor did the same thing, got caught a couple of times, perhaps should have been caught late as well with a Bobby Hill tackle. Still contentious, got him around the thighs, but it very quickly slipped to the knees. Tripping was the decision. I can see an argument on either side. We benefited, but I could see an argument going both ways. So, again, Jack Bowes in that respect, the way he burst through contests, again, it's not going to get recorded as a stat. In fact, it's going to get recorded as a disposal, and he got 19 of them. He was really, really important the way he just piled through contests, Paddy Dangerfield style. It was awesome to see. Tom Atkins, we've spoken a little bit about already. Max Holmes really came into the game through the second half once we injected him into the middle, utilized that speed, utilized his own strength as well. Bailey Smith continues to dominate since he's joined the Cats. He's still hacking the ball a little bit from time to time, but that stamina, he just runs and runs and runs. He goes right to the goal square at both ends of the ground, commits himself 100% to the contest. I love what he's delivering, and long may it continue. Giving himself a bit of a sniff for a Brownlow in his first year. It's very Paddy Dangerfield 2016-esque, which leads us to Patrick Dangerfield. 29 disposals, one of the best games he's played in a long time. In the first half, and he's had a phenomenal season. He had a lot, decent chunk of the ball in the first half, but it's the way he got involved, score involvement, goal assist-wise in the second half that gave Geelong a sniff. He was doing what we've seen him doing all season, and what I just spoke about when it comes to Jack Bowes, bashing his way through contests. He is a wrecking ball. I think I have to quickly go and check Chris Scott's press conference here because he drew a comparison to someone who I believe is an NRL player. I have to quickly try and check the name of this individual because I don't really know the sport very well. Where are we? Jonah Lomu, I presume, is an NRL player, a rugby player of some sort, NRL or union. But he just was not going to get tackled. And so many times we see him bursting through. He's been doing it for years, but the huge advantage of him playing up forward is that he can just bodyline it. Like the ball is coming to him rather than running with the ball and trying to crash through. He is able to just smash through people coming the opposite direction. There was one in particular where, look, he's not the biggest guy in the world. Hoskin Elliott for Collingwood, but he was fresh. He was their sub. He'd only recently come on, and it didn't matter. Danger was going full speed, barrel-chested, straight through. I'm sure he probably broke someone, again, a bit like he did with Jack Silvani last week. So massive effort from Paddy Dangerfield. But some of the players I really want to highlight are some of our lower possession players. Mark O'Connor was huge in the defensive end. Absolutely fantastic. Did some wonderful things up there. O'Sheen Mullen. He's been heavily criticised by a lot of people. I'd been kind of holding back a little bit, but I went for it last week. I believed it was 100% justified last week. He, with 9 disposals, did a phenomenal job on Nick Dacos. Now, Nick Dacos still had 28 or something huge like that, but that was a very much neutered 28 disposals. He was not nearly as potent as usual. He did some phenomenal things in just impacting every single time he got the ball. His disposal efficiency, if I could bring that up really quickly, I'm sure would be extremely limited. He did a phenomenal job in shutting Nick Dacos down over the course of the game. Would have learned a few valuable lessons along the way. He didn't do everything perfectly, but he was really, really important throughout the day there in shutting down one of Collingwood's best player, without doubt. Ollie Henry, obviously a lot to be discussed there. I'm going to quickly bring up because I feel like this is where it's more important when it comes to Ollie Henry at the moment. Which way did they just sort it? They shifted back to numerical order. Score involvements. Where are we? He had 4 score involvements. There was, I saw it somewhere else. Maybe it's back on the other screen. There was, I think it was 2 goal assists. He also then kicked 2 goals himself. This is the Ollie Henry we've been looking for. This is why I said, people, please be patient. He's learning what to do in lieu of Paddy Dangerfield being there. And he had his greatest influence, I think, in the first half when Paddy Dangerfield was missing, but it gave him a bit of a pep in his step. And he kicked that phenomenal goal in the last quarter after Darcy Moore slapped it out. He scooped it up, slapped it on the boot goal. Very reminiscent of a prelim finals last year. I think this was a big step forward for Ollie Henry in the form that he's so desperately trying to find. And again, in time, he, like Shannon Neal, who was really important in that first quarter in particular, will continue to improve as they spend more time with Paddy up there. Let's look at Shannon Neal, though, because I haven't, 4 inside 50s. He butchered a few of those. It wasn't, but he had good, sticky hands. One of the big criticisms of Shannon Neal so far is he's dropped some really clean and obvious and easy ones. Not so much of that tonight. A couple disposals where he could have maybe thought through things a little bit better. He did look like a deer in headlights at different stages, but I think this was a big step forward for him as well. 3 contested marks, 4 score involvements, a big step in the right direction, and disposal efficiency, 37.5. That's the area of his game that he can improve. I am absolutely thrilled with the output of the Cats tonight. They were beaten well and truly for a good 2.5 quarters of this match, and it wasn't ideal. It took us a while to adjust to Reece Stanley's absence and to shift our game to one that was going to be able to hold up and get us this victory. But we did it. They executed it perfectly. They held on when it counted. They got a bit lucky at the end with a shot after the siren, and we got the win. I'm delighted. I hope you are too, Cats fans. That is a look at Geelong and Collingwood. Round 8, 2025. The Cats getting home by 3 points. We needed to make sure we banked this win. This is one of many tough games that we're in the middle of right now. And obviously, we lost a game we shouldn't have lost last week to Carlton. So good to get back on the winners list. Do so against the informed team of the competition, the team that was rapidly becoming the flag favourites. We banked a W. It's awesome to see. Thank you, everyone, for joining me in this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, get the word of the Hoops Crew out there. We want to have more of these conversations with you discussing this great game in depth. If you haven't already, consider becoming a patron member of the Hoops Crew, patreon.com/thehoopscrew, where you can sign up for 7 days, see all that we offer. It's a free trial period. If you like it, though, $5 or $6 a month is all it takes to continue to support us and get all of that awesome exclusive early access and extended content delivered directly to your email inbox. You'll find me at Paul James Games on socials. That's Blue Sky, that's Instagram, and that's Twitter. The Hoops Crew at The Hoops Crew. And until next time, remain Geelong strong, everyone. Great to get a win. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you later.